System 1 loaded.
Hi, my name is Marcus, and we're gonna go over the basics of soldering a wire onto a PCB. First off, you want to start off with stripping your wires down. As you can see here, we've stripped them down, and you want to twist the wires so that they don't come apart when you solder them. You'll take a little bit of solder here, and take your soldering iron right here, and you put a little bit of solder onto your clean soldering iron right there, so you create a little pool of solder on your soldering iron. You want to take your wires and lightly tin the wire, so that's where you're placing your soldering iron tip right on the edge of the wire there. And it's helpful also if you have these little, I call them helping hands. They can help with holding your wires, and that will allow you to hold the soldering iron and the solder at the same time. And we'll go ahead and do that for the rest of these wires here. And that just allows things to stay solid and the wires don't come undone when you're soldering. It allows for a more metal to metal connection than just the individual wire strands on the wire. To take your can in, which has the male connections here, and your can out, which has the female connection, and you'll take on your PCB. Usually you'll have something when you're soldering something with a can. You'll see you have can low, can high, ground, and V+. So again, we'll do the same thing with these wires here. We'll go ahead and tin the wires. So that's just again putting a little bit of solder on the tip of the wire, and do that for one and for two. Wire that, if you see the pad marks here, you'll see you want to have, I think, about half of the wire on the pad. So in length, when you strip the wires here, you want to have them, if not half, to the full length of the pad, and that will ensure an even and strong connection with your pads here. So always make sure, keep your tip clean, make sure that you don't have burnt on resin or plastics or burnt solder on it already, and you place it right on the pad right there. And that the solder that you've already had on the tip of the soldering iron tip will heat up that pad, and you'll go ahead and place a little bit of solder so that it will start to flow. And that's what we're doing here is called tinning the pads, and that's putting a little bit of solder on the pads so that they can then accept more solder when you solder the wires. So we'll go ahead and do that for the rest of these pads here. You might need to put a little more solder on your tip to allow the heat to transfer. So when soldering wires onto a PCB, you want to take your soldering iron tip, and again we're going to place it right on that pad of solder that we heated up right here. We're going to heat up the solder until it's a little pool again. We're going to place the wire right onto that pool and then lift gently up on your soldering iron, and that will cool really quickly, and you'll actually have a really nice solid connection with your PCB and your wire, and that will not come off. So we're going to go ahead and do that for the negative wire again. Just gently take your soldering tip, heat up that pool of wire, and then place your wire gently right inside that pool. So we'll go ahead and do that for our can. The cans are a little different because we're going to have to solder two wires together onto one pad. Take our soldering iron right here, and we're going to take that and heat up. We're going to do the same process. It's really similar. You're just having to hold two wires. So we're going to go ahead and take that, heat up that soldering pool, and then we're going to place the wires there on the pool of solder. And so you can kind of see that there wasn't enough solder for the 2 wires on this case. So we're gonna have to take either your hand and heat up the solder right there and just add a little more solder to the pool. So we're going to go ahead and repeat that process for the can low. Take the braided wires. You can see here I've kind of unbraided them a little bit, and that allows you to place the wires without any tension on the actual wires themselves. So it also just makes it easier to place them. So we're going to go ahead and take the soldering iron again right here and just heat up that pool of solder. You see there, we have now gotten both wires onto the PCB, and you can give them a little pull test, make sure that they are all nice and tight, and there you go. You have soldered a can high, can low, positive, and ground onto a PCB. I hope you're able to take some of the skills that we learned in this video and apply it to some of your FRC bots this year. My name's Marcus with the Velocity Raptors, and I hope you all have a good season.